Hey everyone, still trying to get back into the normal groove of things after Hurricane Harvey, but I did want to make a video addressing the question of game engines. It's been on my agenda for a while. So there's a lot of people who, when they first get into game design, their question is, what game engine should I use? Should I write my own game engine? What are the capabilities of the different engines, and what is really the best one? And just like everything else in gaming, game engines have plenty of fanboyism out there. There's so many people who insist that Unreal Engine 4 is the best thing, or Unity is the best thing. But again, the question, if you're serious about wanting to be a game developer, there is this question of like, what is the best game engine for me? Here's how I think you should look at the question. So I'm not necessarily going to tell you how to choose the right game engine. But what I'm going to suggest to you is that the different game engines, they do indeed have their advantages and their drawbacks. So I consider myself a Unity engine guy, and there's no particular reason behind why I'm a Unity guy over, say, an Unreal guy or writing a custom engine. Well, actually, there is a reason behind writing a custom engine. Writing a custom engine, especially if you want to do 3D work, that means you have to know considerably more than what you would necessarily have to know to get started with a pre-built, one of these freely available engines out there. In order to write your own engine, you need to know everything about 3D graphics, including what your rendering setup is going to be. You have to be able to write shaders. You have to be able to write code that is specific and native to certain graphics cards, at least if you want something that looks fairly good. You could probably write your own engine relatively easily by scouring Google for information about, maybe the way that like the old systems used to work, back when 3D graphics first came around. And at that time, that stuff was a breakthrough, right? But today, when we talk about Unity and Unreal and freely available engines, these allow you to just get started. The graphics are already taken care of, and as new graphics cards and hardware come out, the teams behind those engines, they go and they update the technology so that you don't have to worry about that. So the primary reason that you go out and you grab an engine to use is so that a certain portion of the work is already done for you. So what engines usually contain is they contain lots of components to set up certain aspects of your game, like input. So how does a player interact with controls? They have things for, of course, the graphics, including 2D and 3D. They have, pre-built sort of constructs and structures for interacting with these things. I think in Unity's case, there's even built-in functions for like certain 3D math functions that you may need, like calculating distance in 3D space and things like that. So that's what there is to consider. And the other thing to consider, I suppose, is programming languages. Unreal Engine and most of the gaming industries is still working with C++ because C++ is ridiculously fast. But that in and of itself is not reason enough for me to switch to Unreal, because it's so easy and by comparison, in my opinion, much more expressive to be able to write C# on Unity, because it's less syntax. And the other thing is that behind the scenes, a lot of what Unity is doing when you're using Unity-specific functions in your code is Unity is actually converting a lot of that into C++ behind the scenes. So Unity still allows you to do a lot without having to dig into compiled languages and managing memory and figuring out ways to manipulate garbage collection to make processes more efficient and all this stuff. By the way, if this is all gibberish to you, don't worry about it. The bottom line here is, when it comes to engines, they're providing stuff out of the box, right? And so my suggestion to you would be, as a new game designer or game developer, is just pick whatever seems to feel right to you, and pick whatever is going to meet the needs of what your game demands. So for most people, for most new developers, that is why I would not suggest Unreal Engine, only because there's a lot of complexity there and there's a lot of horsepower with graphics that, unless you're a large team, you're not necessarily going to be able to fully utilize that anyway. So that's why I chose Unity back a couple of years ago, and that's why I'm still working with Unity today as an individual. I think for indies, Unity is just the go-to, and the numbers definitely show that. You know, there's so many people developing on so many different platforms, and Unity supports all these platforms. So Unity is very cross-platform, and indeed indies have flocked to the Unity engine. So that's what I would suggest, you know, and much more important than choosing an engine or debating in your mind about, you know, what it is you're going to adopt. Much more important than that is just learning what you need to know to do game development. If you go back and you watch the video about how I became a software developer, and I might have a card up here, or maybe there's a link down in the description. I'll try and include both so that you can go find the video. When I describe my story, I started game development from business applications, and it turned out that not a lot translates, even though it's the same, you know, so I wrote C# for business applications, and then I wrote C# in Unity, and it turns out not a lot of the knowledge really translated all that well, because game development is a very specialized skill set, you know, especially stuff like working in 3D space and making things efficient when you're talking about frame rates and optimizations in this way, and just working within the game loop, okay? It's a very different way of having to construct software than just saying, hey, I have these instructions, I need you to go manipulate this data and insert it into a database, and, you know, to a certain extent, we kind of don't care how lightning fast it is, as long as it's getting the job done and meeting business requirements and things like that. Totally different world doing business applications. However, that being said, there are some things that do translate over. So anyway, I would just suggest learn game development ideas, right? Learn the concepts. Learn what a vector 3 is and a vector 2. Learn how to work in 3D space. Learn what rendering is. Learn what, when you're looking at 3D graphics, learn what that means. Those things are much more important. Learn how the game loop works, right? In you know, like at least in Unity's case, when you write scripts, you're writing scripts that have certain things that might happen at the start of game, and you might have certain things that happen every single frame in an update function, okay? So learn what those things mean. And of course, every game loop basically has that, okay? In Unreal probably, you know, it will have some equivalent to that. Learning these concepts of game development are much more important. It doesn't matter where you start. It really, really doesn't. And for a new developer, you don't want to attempt anything that is beyond your grasp, anything that is too insanely difficult. You know, you're not going to put together Destiny by yourself, or Call of Duty by yourself. You know, you're not going to put together Overwatch by yourself, or World of Warcraft. You're not going to make an MMO and launch it as a single individual. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. Okay, there's just too much to consider with those kinds of projects. But what you probably could do is you could recreate Tetris and classic games that were from, you know, the old era. You could create new 2D games very, very quickly and efficiently with today's technology. You can create 3D games. You could create a very small action-adventure game or a very small RPG on your own, by yourself, in a reasonable amount of time if you really dedicate the hours to it. You can get those things done in a matter of weeks or months or a very small number of years, but I would strongly recommend you shoot for something you can do today, and then maybe within a week, and then maybe within a month. Okay, start there, and if you can get something done in that frame of time, that will give you a very strong idea over what it would take on a much longer scale project. And as well as, you know, what it might require to build a team. Who do you need for the team? You know, these are all things that you will find out as you begin learning game development. So the secret to this video is, which I somewhat apologize for, is that we're not really talking about engines here. What I'm telling you is that if you're asking about what engine to use as a beginner, it's the wrong question, okay? The real question should be, what concepts should I learn about game development. And we may or may not get into that again here in the near future. If you want me to talk more about that, definitely leave me a comment and let me know. I'm still getting things set up here in the office. I still need to order a new tripod. This over here, right there, that is a new backdrop, and I'm gonna get back into the swing of developing video once again. That's it. Thank you for watching. I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks. Bye.